Raptors, birds of prey like eagles, hawks, and falcons, represent some of nature's most magnificent and powerful creatures. They are apex predators, masters of the sky, symbols of freedom and strength across virtually every human culture. But they are also among the most vulnerable to human-caused injuries. Electrocution from power lines, collisions with vehicles and buildings, poisoning from pesticides, and shooting by those who misunderstand their ecological role. When these magnificent birds arrive at wildlife rehabilitation centers, they often carry injuries so severe that flight, their defining characteristic, their very essence, seems impossible to restore. This is the story of Aurora, a golden eagle found in the mountains of Montana in September 2022, unable to fly, with injuries that suggested she would never soar again. 7 months later, her release would produce a moment so unexpected, so profound, that it would fundamentally change how rehabilitators understood the psychological complexity of these remarkable birds. The Beartooth Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, located in the rugged mountains of south-central Montana, specializes in raptor rehabilitation. Director and lead wildlife veterinarian Dr. Rachel Morrison had worked with birds of prey for 23 years when she received the call about Aurora in September 2022. A hiking couple had discovered the golden eagle on a remote mountain trail, grounded, unable to fly, visibly injured, and slowly starving. When golden eagles come to us, it's usually electrocution or collision injuries, Dr. Morrison explained during an interview at the rehabilitation center. Powerline electrocution causes severe burns and often wing damage. Vehicle collisions cause fractures and head trauma. But Aurora's injuries were different, more complex, more mysterious, and ultimately more challenging than anything I'd encountered. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel, because these incredible true stories reveal the remarkable intelligence and emotional depth of wild animals, and the dedicated humans who help them heal. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss these extraordinary stories of recovery, connection, and the unexpected ways animals express gratitude and awareness. Aurora arrived at the center in critical condition. She was severely emaciated, having been unable to hunt for what appeared to be weeks. She had a fractured left ulna, one of the major wing bones, that had partially healed incorrectly, limiting wing extension. She had soft tissue damage to her left shoulder. And most concerning, she had what veterinarians call flight inhibition, a psychological condition where a bird that is physically capable of flight refuses to fly, often due to pain memory or trauma. The physical injuries were serious but treatable, Dr. Morrison noted. We could surgically repair the bone, address the soft tissue damage, restore physical function, but the psychological component, that's what worried me. Flight inhibition can be permanent. We've had birds that were physically perfect but would never fly again because psychologically they associated flight with pain or trauma, and without flight, a raptor cannot be released. It would be a death sentence. Golden eagles, Aquila crisatos, are among North America's largest and most powerful raptors. With wingspans reaching 7.5 feet and weights up to 15 pounds, they are formidable predators capable of taking prey as large as young deer. They are also remarkably intelligent, with complex social behaviors, problem-solving abilities, and what researchers increasingly recognize as emotional sophistication. Aurora was estimated at approximately 4 years old, an adult but still relatively young for a species that can live 30-plus years in the wild. Analysis of her injuries suggested she had likely been struck by a vehicle while feeding on roadkill, a common but devastating hazard for eagles. The impact had fractured her wing and caused her to crash, and in the weeks following, unable to hunt, she had slowly starved while the bone healed incorrectly. She was tough, Dr. Morrison recalled. Most birds in her condition would have died. The fact that she survived weeks unable to hunt, with a fractured wing, in mountain terrain, speaks to extraordinary resilience. But survival and recovery are different things. The surgical repair of Aurora's wing was complex. Veterinary orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Kowalski, who specializes in avian fractures, was brought in to perform the procedure. The incorrectly healed fracture had to be rebroken, realigned, and stabilized with surgical pins. The soft tissue damage required careful repair to preserve muscle function critical for flight. Bird bones are completely different from mammal bones, Dr. Kowalski explained. They're hollow, lightweight, designed for flight. Repairing them requires extreme precision. Too much hardware and you add weight that prevents flight. Too little and the repair fails. And with eagles, the forces involved in flight are tremendous. Those wings generate enormous power. The repair has to be perfect. The surgery was successful from a technical perspective, but Aurora's recovery would reveal the complexity of raptor rehabilitation that extends far beyond physical healing. In the weeks following surgery, as her wing healed, Aurora showed no interest in flying. She would hop, walk, climb, and perch, but when encouraged to fly, even short distances, she refused. We use a process called flight conditioning with recovering raptors, explained rehabilitation specialist Maria Santos, who worked closely with Aurora. We start in small flight cages where they can make short flights between perches. As they build strength and confidence, we move to progressively larger flight cages. Our largest is 120 feet long, allowing sustained flight. But Aurora wouldn't participate. She would climb to high perches, which showed her wing functioned, but she wouldn't fly. The team tried various approaches. They used food motivation, placing meals at heights that required flight to access. They introduced other eagles to demonstrate flying behavior. They tried patience, giving Aurora time to discover flight on her own terms. Weeks became months. Aurora's wing healed completely. X-rays showed perfect bone alignment. Physical therapy demonstrated full range of motion. Physically, she was capable of flight. Psychologically, she was grounded. By month 4, I was seriously concerned we'd have a permanent, non-flighted eagle, Dr. Morrison admitted. Physically perfect, but psychologically unable to fly. That would mean permanent captivity, either at our facility or transferred to an educational program. She could never be wild again. For an eagle, a creature literally born to soar, permanent grounding is tragic. But Maria noticed something interesting. Aurora was watching, Maria explained. When other eagles flew, she tracked their movement with intense focus. When wind blew through the flight cage, she would extend her wings and feel the air. She wasn't indifferent to flight. She was studying it, thinking about it. I started to believe she wasn't unable to fly. She was unwilling. And there's a huge difference. The breakthrough came in an unexpected way. A young bald eagle arrived at the facility, also recovering from wing injuries. This eagle, named Scout, was bold, confident, and as soon as he was medically cleared, enthusiastically flew in the conditioning cages. He was placed in the large flight cage adjacent to Aurora's enclosure. Aurora's behavior changed immediately, Maria recalled. She watched Scout constantly, and there was something in her body language. Attention and interest, almost like competitive spirit. Eagles are territorial, competitive birds. I wondered if Scout's presence might motivate what our training approaches couldn't. After 2 weeks of watching Scout, Aurora made her first flight. It was brief, perhaps 15 feet from perch to perch, but it was flight. Maria witnessed it and immediately called Dr. Morrison. When Rachel told me Aurora flew, I didn't believe it at first, Maria said with a laugh. 4 months of refusal, then suddenly she decides to fly. But that's raptors. They operate on their own timeline, make decisions we don't fully understand. From that first flight, Aurora's progress was remarkable. Within days, she was flying the full length of the conditioning cage. Within 2 weeks, she was demonstrating the powerful, sustained flight characteristic of healthy golden eagles. Her technique was perfect. The injury had left no physical deficit. She had simply needed to decide, on her own terms, that she was ready. By month 7, March 2023, Aurora was deemed ready for release. She had achieved and maintained healthy weight, demonstrated strong flight capability, and showed appropriate wariness of humans. A release site was selected in the Beartooth Mountains, an area of prime eagle habitat with low human presence and abundant prey. The day of Aurora's release was cold and clear, with light winds, perfect conditions for an eagle's first flight back to freedom. A small group gathered to witness the moment. Dr. Morrison, Maria, other rehabilitation staff, and representatives from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks who monitored the release for documentation. Aurora was transported in a specialized carrier to the release site, a mountain meadow with clear airspace and stunning views of the surrounding peaks. The protocol for raptor releases is simple. Open the carrier door and step back, allowing the bird to leave on its own terms, at its own pace. I've done dozens of eagle releases, Dr. Morrison said. Usually the bird exits quickly, takes flight immediately, and disappears. It's beautiful but brief. They're wild animals returning to wildness. We expect no acknowledgement, no interaction. They leave, and that's appropriate. But Aurora's release was different. Maria opened the carrier door and stepped back. Aurora emerged slowly, deliberately. She stepped out onto the snow, extended her wings fully, 7 feet of magnificent golden-brown plumage catching the sunlight, and looked around. Then she turned and looked directly at the humans gathered approximately 20 feet away. The eye contact was unmistakable, Maria recalled, emotion evident in her voice. She looked at each of us, really looked, with that piercing raptor gaze. It lasted perhaps 30 seconds, but felt longer, and I had the overwhelming sense that she knew we had helped her, knew this was goodbye, knew what was happening. Then Aurora turned away, took 3 powerful running steps, and launched into flight. But instead of simply flying away into the distance as eagles typically do, she circled. She flew in a broad circle around the meadow, gaining altitude, her powerful wings beating steadily. Then she circled again and again, 3 complete circles around the release site, climbing higher with each revolution. I've never seen anything like it in 23 years of raptor rehabilitation, Dr. Morrison said, tears visible in her eyes at the memory. Eagles don't circle release sites. They leave. The circling behavior, especially 3 deliberate circles, was intentional, was communicative. She was saying goodbye, or thank you, or acknowledging something. I know that sounds anthropomorphic, but I've worked with these birds my entire career. That behavior was not typical. It was meaningful. After the 3rd circle, Aurora angled her wings and flew directly west, toward the mountain peaks, her silhouette growing smaller until she disappeared into the vastness of the Montana wilderness. The gathered humans stood in stunned silence, processing what they had witnessed. Everyone was crying, Maria admitted. Even the wildlife officers who do this professionally, who are trained to maintain objective distance. We all felt we'd witnessed something extraordinary, not just a successful release, but a moment of genuine connection, of recognition, of something we don't have good scientific language for. But that felt profoundly real. The story of Aurora's release spread through the raptor rehabilitation community and generated significant discussion among wildlife behaviorists and ornithologists about avian cognition and emotional capacity. Dr. Sarah Chen, a behavioral ecologist at Cornell University's Lab of Ornithology, who studies raptor intelligence, found the account fascinating. We're increasingly recognizing that birds, particularly corvids and raptors, have cognitive and emotional sophistication that rivals many mammals, Dr. Chen explained. They demonstrate problem-solving, tool use, complex social relationships, and what appears to be emotional processing. The idea that an eagle might recognize helpers, understand its situation, and communicate acknowledgement isn't scientifically implausible. It's just difficult to study systematically. Dr. Chen noted that circling behavior in raptors can serve various functions: territorial display, thermal seeking, or orientation. But the context matters, she emphasized. Circling immediately after release, in light winds that didn't provide thermals, specifically around the release site and humans, before departing. That's not typical orientation or thermal seeking behavior. It's behavior with apparent intentionality that's difficult to explain through simple instinct. Several wildlife rehabilitators contacted the Beartooth Center to share similar experiences, raptors that seemed to acknowledge humans before release through prolonged eye contact, specific vocalizations, or unusual flight patterns. These accounts, long dismissed as anthropomorphic interpretation, began to be documented more carefully. For years, rehabilitators shared these stories privately but rarely publicly, fearing professional ridicule, Dr. Morrison noted. But Aurora's story created space for these conversations. We're not claiming eagles think like humans. We're saying they think. They have complex internal experiences we're only beginning to understand. The release was recorded on video by Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks for documentation purposes. The footage has been viewed by thousands and used in educational programs about wildlife rehabilitation and raptor conservation. It shows clearly the deliberate nature of Aurora's circling and the prolonged visual contact before release. 6 months after release, a golden eagle matching Aurora's description and size was photographed by wildlife cameras in the Beartooth region, hunting successfully in alpine terrain. While positive identification without bands or tracking devices is impossible, The evidence suggests Aurora adapted well to wildlife. That's the goal of rehabilitation, returning animals to the wild to live as wild animals. Dr. Morrison reflected. Aurora went from being unable to fly, probably destined for euthanasia or permanent captivity, to being a free eagle hunting in her native mountains. That's success regardless of what happened at release. But what happened at release continues to resonate. The moment has become emblematic of something rehabilitation professionals have long felt but struggled to articulate. The animals they help are not simple biological machines to be repaired and released. They are individuals with awareness, with experiences, with what appears to be emotional depth. Aurora changed how I think about the animals I treat, Dr. Morrison said. I've always been committed to their welfare, always treated them with respect. But Aurora made me recognize them as beings with interior lives more complex than I'd credited. That's changed my practice. More attention to psychological welfare, more patience with recovery timelines, more recognition that healing happens on their schedule, not ours. Maria, who worked most closely with Aurora during rehabilitation, carries the memory vividly. People sometimes ask if I think Aurora really thanked us, Maria reflected. I don't know if gratitude is the right word. That's human language for human emotion. But recognition, awareness, acknowledgement of connection, yes. I believe that's what we witnessed. And it was one of the most profound moments of my life. The Beartooth Wildlife Rehabilitation Center continues its work, treating 100 raptors annually. They've incorporated lessons from Aurora's rehabilitation, particularly around psychological recovery and allowing birds to progress at their own pace, into their protocols. Success rates have improved, and more birds that might previously have been deemed non-releasable are successfully returned to the wild. Every animal teaches us something, Dr. Morrison concluded, but some animals teach us things that change everything. Aurora taught us that healing involves not just body but mind and spirit. She taught us that these magnificent creatures have depths we're only beginning to explore. And she taught us, in that moment of circling, that the boundary between human and wild, between us and them, is thinner and more permeable than we sometimes believe. 1 year after Aurora's release, on a clear March day, Dr. Morrison and Maria returned to the release site. They didn't expect to see Aurora. Golden eagles have vast territories and random encounters are unlikely. They simply wanted to return to the place where something extraordinary had happened. As they stood in the meadow, a golden eagle soared overhead, circling once before continuing toward the mountain peaks. They couldn't know if it was Aurora. Probably it wasn't. The mountains support multiple eagles. But the symbolism was perfect. Whether it was her or not doesn't really matter, Maria said, watching the eagle disappear into the distance. Aurora is out there somewhere, flying free, living the life she was meant to live. And somewhere in those mountains, there's an eagle who knows, really knows, that humans helped her. That's enough. If you watched until here, it's because you enjoyed this story. Leave a comment saying, I watched until here, so I can get to know you and know who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. And if this incredible story of healing, intelligence, and the unexpected moment when an eagle seemed to say goodbye moved you, hit the like button and share this video with anyone who needs to be reminded that animals are more aware, more emotional, more connected than we often recognize. Subscribe for more extraordinary true stories that reveal the profound depths of animal consciousness and the moments of genuine connection between humans and wildlife.